Jacob, there are a few objectives. First, to discuss structural disagreement on the attitude to adopt towards Hamas, because on the one hand, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have atrocious relations with Hamas for at least 15, 20 years. The Saudi authorities have been accusing Hamas of being too close to Iran, too close to the Muslim Brotherhood, and they regularly arrest Palestinian leaders and activists on their soil. And on the other hand, Russia has always had much friendlier relations with Hamas. The Russians have never designated them a terrorist organization, and they will support everything that can be a blow to U.S. interests. That's why Russia did not condemn Hamas on October 7, although around 15 or 16 Russians died in those attacks. And another objective is also linked in a way to the war in Gaza. Putin wants to make sure that the oil prices policy continues to serve Russian interests. Russia, as you know, is highly dependent on revenues from its hydrocarbon exports, which, by the way, dropped by almost 50% this year compared with last year. So Putin is here to make sure that Saudi Arabia and the UAE agree to keep oil prices high, notably by taking advantage of the market uncertainty caused by the war in Gaza.
Yeah. We also mentioned the Houthis. There's the Saudi Arabian ties there. Is this part of the agenda as well?
Well, Moscow is aligning more and more explicitly to the global south and to whatever can erode the US-led world order, so to speak. And Putin benefits from the chaos in Gaza and from a certain controlled chaos in some other parts of the Middle East, because it means Western distraction from his war in Ukraine. So just like Hamas, the Houthis are part of the equation. Russia maintained its embassy in Yemen despite the war there. They abstained many times at the UN on arms embargo resolutions against the Houthis. They welcomed their leaders in Moscow. They did nothing against Iran arming them and so on. And that's another point of contention with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who, as you know, have pretty much always opted for the, let's say, the tough approach with Yemen.
Yeah, and there's COP28 in the background.
There is COP28 in the background, but Putin's visit won't have any impact whatsoever on this summit, because he will not visit the summit venue. He won't show because he doesn't want to disrupt the negotiations on climate change, not because he has an interest in climate change talks, but because these talks are hosted in a country, the UAE, with which Putin wants to maintain good relations. So he cannot afford to cause a scandal at COP28 with Western delegations leaving the venue to protest his presence.
Right. Meanwhile, do you hear anything about the Gulf countries being involved in what's happening in Gaza in terms of negotiations, hostages, ending the war, and so on?
Well, as I told you, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are suffering from their appalling relations with Hamas. So the solution will come from Qatar. Qatar being the only country in the world to have good ties with all the actors in this Gaza war. They will do more. There will be more hostage releases in the weeks and the months to come. It is in Qatar's interest, because a war is clearly not a single country in this region, in the Gulf, wants this conflict to last, because these countries' development cannot happen if the Middle East remains eternally associated with this notion and this idea of conflict.